Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I'd like to introduce Ann Dellinger from ITNAmerica's Council of Advisors to give our opening remarks.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Here at ITNAmerica, we spend our days devoted to increasing mobility for older people and those with transportation challenges. We're excited to share the work we're doing and the collaborations that make it possible. You'll hear from ITNAmerica's founder and CEO, Catherine Freund, about the work ITNAmerica is doing and what we're looking forward to as we move forward and continue to grow. Catherine will give you an overview of the big picture and why this work is important before you hear about the specific work we're doing to make it easier to find a ride, provide a ride, pay for a ride, and find drivers. Now, our keynote speaker is Bella Dinzar, the Senior Advisor for Public Health and Transportation to the FIA Foundation, an international philanthropy based in the UK. Trained in public health, Bella has served as Vice Chairman and Acting Chairman of the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, or NTSB, Co-Chair of the UN NGO Committee for Sustainable Development, and co-founder of the O5 Saves Lives Coalition, whose first chair was the Honorable Norman Mineta. After working with AARP, AOTA, and the AAA Foundation on tools to assist older populations with mobility, Bella was appointed to the 2005 White House Conference on Aging Advisory Committee. She currently serves on the Board of Advisors to the US GAO Comptroller General and is a past board member of ITNAmerica. She is also honored to work with the Blackfeet Nation and the East End District Houston on their Safe Streets and Roads for All projects. This extensive and varied experience gives Bella unique insight into transportation and mobility, and we can't wait to hear what she has to say today. Nicole Knowles with the Council on Aging will share how they are using the Rides Insight API on their benefits checkup website to make it easier to find a ride. Next, you'll hear about how we are empowering communities to set up volunteer transportation programs using our ITN Country platform. We have the founders of programs from Detroit, Michigan, and Sarasota, Florida here to share their experiences and give you a glimpse of what it's like for them in the field. For those of you interested in starting a program in your own community, we'll have a free workshop you can participate in after this meeting ends. That workshop will start at 3 p.m. Eastern, and we'll share the information again at the end for those who'd like to join. We're very excited to have Virginie Delbert here from Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. She'll talk about their commitment to increasing access to eye care and the grant they fund to provide free rides. You'll hear how ITNAmerica assists by coordinating with over 70 programs across the country to make sure rides are available, and you'll also get to hear directly from the people the rides impact. We have Kathleen Davis and Patty Sarchi, writers from ITN programs in Missouri and Maine, here to share their experiences and tell you what the free eye care rides mean to them. Finally, you'll learn about one of ITNAmerica's newest projects, the America's Volunteer Driver Center. This project aims to raise awareness about the need for volunteer drivers and will create an online hub that can connect potential drivers to programs all over the United States. And speaking of volunteer drivers, we want to start today by thanking them. The volunteers who provide countless rides each year, making riders feel safe and secure while helping their neighbors stay active in the community, are real community heroes. And each year, ITNAmerica presents the Max and Helen Israelite Volunteer of the Year Award to deserving volunteer drivers. We have 3 categories this year: our ITN affiliate programs, our ITN country programs, and our trusted transportation providers. I would like to introduce ITN board member Larry Israelite, son of the award's namesakes, to present this year's award.
So I know that Larry is joining from his phone. He's in the car today. We've asked him to unmute. I think he's here. Well, if Larry's not able to get the technology going, we appreciate him trying to call in. Catherine, would you be willing to talk a little bit about the Max and Helen Israelite Volunteer of the Year Award?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And if Larry calls in while I'm speaking, he can automatically bump me. Okay. Max Israelite was one of the founding members of the original Independent Transportation Network. And he would travel from Pennsylvania or Massachusetts for monthly board meetings in Maine. I met Max because he published an op-ed piece in Newsweek magazine. There's Larry. Max published an op-ed piece in Newsweek magazine saying that when he was 75 years of age, he was going to stop driving because he didn't trust the state to properly test him and tell him when it was no longer safe. And he said he would rather stop driving too soon than a millisecond too late and be the person who hurt someone's child. That, of course, got me on the phone to talk with him. We met for breakfast, and I invited him to be on the board of directors of this idea I had for a transportation service that would help older people get around using private automobiles. This was at least a decade before Uber and Lyft was doing it. So Max did it, and Max is a writer and just a wonderful, warm, kind human being. When Max passed away, I'm sorry, is Larry here?
I think I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh, hi, Larry. Why don't you bump me? I was just filling in because we were waiting for you.
Oh, okay. I thought it was 12:40.
Okay.
Sure. Well, first of all, I apologize for being late, and I apologize for not being able to do this in a real way, but I have a doctor's appointment about 45 minutes from here, so I had to drive. So thank you, everybody, for tolerating this. Catherine began to introduce my father, and what I was going to say about this was that there's this.
Take the next right on Victoria Vista.
There's this concept in Judaism called tikkun olam, which roughly translates to repair the world. And I think my father would have said that he thought the world would be a better place with him not on the road, which is why he gave up his license when he turned 75. And I think the people who knew him would.
A quarter mile at the traffic circle, take the first exit onto Esplanade Boulevard.
I think the people who knew him would say that the world is a better place just because he was in it. And, he spent a lot of time going to Maine to be on the board of directors of this new organization. He tried really hard to help all the people that he knew. And I think that's a lot like the people who were both nominated for and were selected to win this year's Max and Helen Israelite Volunteer of the Year Award. They take their own time to help make the lives of other people better, both the people they drive by giving them access to safe, clean, reliable transportation, but also the other people on the road whose lives are made better because the people who are receiving the rides won't be driving on them. And I think that's a big thing. And so I think that in a lot of ways, the people who volunteer for ITN share a lot of the same qualities that my father had. And that I think, as Catherine would probably say, having known him for a long time, that'd be true of anybody who was anything like him. So it's my family's honor and pleasure to recognize people who demonstrate the kind of commitment to making the world a better place that ITN volunteers demonstrate, and for the people who have been selected as this year's winners. Since I'm driving, I can't read the information or mention their names, but I'll now turn this back over to Catherine or Morgan, who will do that. So I'll sign off by saying thank you for everything that all of you do for ITN and in your local communities. And I hope you all have a great rest of the meeting.
Thank you so much, Larry. Thanks for taking time out of your drive. We really appreciate it.
But I'm still going to listen for a while.
Great. As Larry mentioned, I volunteered to act as his secretary since he was in a vehicle. So I'll now share with you our winners for this year. For our ITN affiliate programs, those are the original ITN model. The winner this year is actually a 2-for-1. It's Vic and Peg Dabrowski from ITN Gateway. And now I'll read you the nomination letter that we received for them. Vic and Peg Dabrowski started driving for us on November 14th, 2017, and they haven't stopped since. We like to think of them as our Energizer bunnies. They just keep going and going. In the almost 6 years that they've both been offering their time and treasure to ITN, we consider this to be 12 years of driving because there's 2 of them. They've delivered quite a lot for ITN riders. Together, they've given almost 1,600 rides for a total of 29,011 miles. Yep, that's right, almost 30,000 miles in less than 6 years. And to put that into an amazing perspective, they've driven more miles than the circumference of our beautiful planet Earth. St. Charles County is quite a large county, and for us, this is remarkable and really speaks to their devotion to our mission. In fact, their lives are dedicated to helping and serving others, not only with ITN Gateway, but through the overseas mission trips they've participated in for over 20 years, volunteering at their church in grade school through the years, and caring for elderly parents. I'd like to add a couple of personal stories to further highlight how wonderful this couple is and how much they reflect the mission of ITN. When a rider desperately needed a medical supply item and called for a ride, but was physically unable to go in the car with a driver, it was a same-day ride, and we explained that ITN isn't a courier service per se. We called Peg Dabrowski, and she did not hesitate to step up and offer to go pick up those supplies and personally deliver them to the rider's home. To say our rider was grateful is an understatement. Since Vic and Peg have both cared for their own aging parents, they sincerely understood how critical the request was. Peg and Vic have become close to many of the riders that they drive. In fact, they were on a vacation this summer and insisted we let them know how Millie was getting along. This is an 81-year-old rider that they've both taken many, many times to her weekly doctor's appointment to have a blood infusion. When we heard that Millie had entered hospice care, we emailed Peg while she and Vic were out of town just to let her know. And her response was, "Debbie, I really do appreciate you sharing this information. I'm so sorry they cannot contain the pain that's overwhelming her. I trust the hospice will bring relief for that. She's been such an enormous blessing in my life, in particular these last few years. Would you mind sending me her address? I'd like to send a card." When asked to give a quote from a volunteer driver that was going to be used for an email blast into social media to promote the annual philanthropic collaborative that ITNAmerica put on, Vic sent this in. "Peg and I continue to volunteer with ITN because we genuinely enjoy the people we drive. They represent a great cross-section of interesting, humble, thankful people that we learn a lot from. You could also say that we drive in honor of our fathers, both of who live far away and could benefit from a service like ITN." So that was our affiliate winners, Peg and Vic. Now I'd like to tell you a little bit about our ITN country winner for this year. The winner selected for that was Donald Dybert from Senior Transportation Services. Senior Transport Services nominates Don Dybert as its Volunteer of the Year candidate. Don passed away suddenly in May, driving as a volunteer up until the final week of his life. As the co-founder of Senior Transport Services, he worked hard to build it from the ground up, always dedicated to the community and the needs of the people around him. He believed fully in the ITN model and the benefits it provides for communities across the country. We can think of no one more deserving than Don. And lastly, our trusted transportation providers also submitted for a volunteer of the year. And the winner selected in that category was John Bissell from Eastside Friends of Seniors. John has been driving for Eastside Friends of Seniors since August 2016. Eastside Friends of Seniors serves seniors 60 plus in Washington. John, that's Washington State. John, a retiree himself, is often driving clients in their mid-70s to mid-80s. John is level-headed, patient, and accommodating. So far this year, he's done 38 drives and driven 1,562 miles. John has the ability to engage people from a wide variety of backgrounds and viewpoints. He's high energy and always looking for a chance to help others. Clients have called us, letting us know how wonderful John is. One client called in and said, he was beautiful, a beautiful person with a good sense of humor. I tried to tip him, but he wouldn't take the money. He was right on time. He was so wonderful. I wanted to give him some kudos and tell him thank you. John also always keeps a cool head. On one ride, John was transporting 3 people to 2 different locations in Seattle. There was a widower who had an appointment and a couple who needed to go to the University of Washington Medical Center. We're often short on drivers, and only a handful of our volunteers will drive in Seattle. Sometimes we combine requests to accommodate everyone. Both gentlemen John was driving that day were in their mid-70s. One gentleman had a speech impediment, and the couple, the husband, had Alzheimer's. On the way back, the group wanted to stop at a pharmacy. John was obliging, but then the widower wandered off, and John was unable to locate him when it was time to go. Although the situation was disconcerting, John remained calm. He eventually gathered everyone and brought them home safely. We know John's handy. He also helps his family with home repairs, and he's a great public speaker. If jury duty doesn't intervene, the plan is to have John present at a local event to recruit more volunteers. John has saved our skins a number of times by taking the requests that no one else will take. He's just a fantastic all-around guy and a phenomenal volunteer. Please consider him for your award. And those are our 3 winners. Now that we have gone through those, I'm happy to turn things over to Catherine, our founder.
Hi, everybody. I would like to take a few minutes of your time to tell you a story. I do want to quickly mention how grateful we are to the Israelite family. They have endowed this award for a decade, so everyone can be recognized. I want to recognize them. Thank you all for being here today. So brief story, just take me a few minutes. I think at ITNAmerica, we seem always to have our eyes on the horizon, which is, of course, the theme for our annual conference this year. But it's really just a metaphor for looking always toward the future. I think that when we are looking toward the future, when we are thinking, we either begin with the general and move to the specific, or we begin with the specific and move to the general. I think for most of us, it's the latter, because we begin with our own experiences. And that is how I started ITNAmerica, literally at my kitchen table. I'm sitting at the same kitchen table right now. A very dear member of my family was hurt in a car accident, and I wanted to do whatever I could to assure that other people were not hurt. That led to the creation of the classic ITN model here in Portland, Maine. That transportation service is still going strong, providing rides 24/7 in private automobiles with both paid and volunteer drivers. But that led to the development of software for the program so that we could be sure to meet the needs of older people and people with mobility challenges. And that has gone on to become our technology department. And that led to including a detailed research database in the software so that we could gather data and learn how to serve people better. And that became a research department. And that led to recreating the ITN model across the United States and connecting everyone into a national network. That became our ITN affiliates, and it's really the founding part of the national network. The need to provide accessible training led to the Community in the Cloud, which is our virtual training program for community transportation. When Regeneron Pharmaceuticals came to us with the need for a national hotline to help older people and people with visual impairments find the transportation services that they need, we built a national database for everyone to use. It is free, it is online, it is called Rides in Sight. So that is a department at ITNAmerica. Regeneron has also supplied grant funds to help people get to the eye doctor across the United States, and that led to our relationships with almost 70 organizations that we now call our trusted transportation partner providers. When the National Council on Aging needed a transportation database for their benefits checkup, that led to an application program interface, also called an API, that made our national transportation database a resource available to NCOA and to other organizations across the country. As we looked toward the horizon and saw the need to scale what we're doing so more people could be helped, we convened the Philanthropic Collaborative, bringing foundations together with help from the Consumer Technology Association Foundation. And that is how we raised the funds to move our technology to the Salesforce platform. That's what we needed to do to scale. And as we look to the future, to have a secure, stable, steady technology platform for all the services that we were beginning to provide and that all rely heavily on technology. That led to a cooperative agreement with the Federal Transit Administration to demonstrate our rural transportation model, ITN Country, which is built to be affordable and flexible and to scale. And finally, that led to the need for more people to be part of the solution. Every single volunteer program I know, every single one across the United States, could help more people with more volunteers, more volunteer drivers. That led to America's Volunteer Driver Center. That's a national public information campaign with support from the CDC and the Federal Transit Administration to literally change the way Americans think about and support transportation for our aging population and for all the people with mobility challenges. We are incredibly grateful to Senators Susan Collins and Angus King for the congressionally directed grants they have supported to fund the planning for America's Volunteer Driver Center, bringing together subject matter experts and transportation providers with representatives from business and industry, philanthropy, and government at all levels to help us all move toward the horizon with confidence and with our eyes on a solution where we are helping each other remain independently in our own homes and in our communities as we age. We know what people need. They need a ride, and we can do that. We can do that. Now I'd like to introduce my friend of 20 years, Bella Dinzar. Ann Dellinger read all her credentials, so I would just like to say that Bella is a woman who seems to effortlessly demonstrate leadership, kindness, and wisdom in this field. I know her from the Transportation Research Board and the White House Conference on Aging, and that was the year that Bella and Clayton Fong and I put our heads together and managed to get transportation as one of the top 3 policy recommendations for older people for the United States. So Bella, it's all yours.
Thank you, Catherine. Well, good morning or good afternoon, everyone, wherever you are. Thank you very much for that kind introduction, Catherine, and also to Ann. I think that the word hero is probably overused these days, but really, Catherine Freund and Anne Dellinger are really two of my longtime heroes, both for what they've done and who they are. So I'm really honored that they would both introduce me. I'm also delighted and honored to be here today to speak at your 16th annual conference. Thank you, Morgan, Ali, Nick, Susan, everyone at ITN for organizing such an interesting meeting. And I'm very excited to hear about all the good work you're doing, which has been an inspiration to me for so many years. We don't have enough in the world today that is truly inspiring and also will affect lasting change. But ITNAmerica is one of those things. So your conference this year is entitled Transportation on the Horizon, which I feel is so very apt. Since ITNAmerica has always been looking forward, you've always been innovative and looking towards the future from your very inception. You were and are futurists in the very best and most honorable use of the word. A word which really was first used in the 1840s and then popular again in the 1920s and 30s in the Italian art world. But now there are quite a few people today who are called futurists in many fields. But all of you are looking towards a future in the best sense, because you aren't just trying to predict it, you're trying to change the future for the better. You're always looking forward towards a horizon, but really, I guess most importantly, you're keeping your feet planted right on the ground in your communities. And you're forward thinking because you've certainly remained adaptable and flexible over the years. I think that's why you are and will be ever more successful. And I believe, especially right now at this key moment in time, ITNAmerica is well positioned to initiate real change, see change. I know it's hard to believe, especially for many of you who've been working on this issue for decades. But those of us watching, from a little bit of distance, like me, and trying to help in any small way I can, have seen the effect of ITN on our nation, even if from your point of view, your progress may seem a little bit, it may seem glacial. So you always, to me, have seemed to know something that it took me far too long to learn. You've always seemed to know that in transportation, in communities, in almost everything we do or work on, that everything is connected. So first, I hope you don't mind if I take a few minutes to tell you a little bit about myself and how that's really been connected to ITNAmerica all along the way for over 20 years, as Catherine said. Could I have the next slide, please? So I have known about ITNAmerica in 2001. The next slide. I think I put them out of order. If you could go to the third slide, thank you. And I even proudly served on the ITN board for several years. But then in 2015, I was nominated and then Senate confirmed as the vice chairman of the NTSB, which is the National Transportation Safety Board, which is an independent US government agency that investigates, transportation disasters. So at the NTSB, working on disaster investigations, we made safety policy recommendations to prevent disasters in aviation, in rail, maritime, and on the roads. And although it was certainly a challenging job, in a way it was easy because it was easy to explain and it was easy to get attention because we were working on disasters. So if you can go back to the second slide, sorry about that, Morgan. These kind of disasters, like this crash in Massachusetts, which are always shocking and we never want to happen again. But disasters like these are the ones that get people's attention. So I tried to leverage the attention that the NTSB got around plane and train crashes to gain more attention for the everyday but also important issue of road safety and mobility. And we did make some headway on alcohol impaired driving and other road safety issues. But it's very hard, as you know, to get people's attention about assisting people with mobility unless there's a disaster. It always seemed to take something like the Santa Monica Farmers Market crash occurring, which your work helps to prevent the risk of happening again. So we'll take that. If you could go ahead and go to the next screen. You probably don't want to look at that plane crash for too long. So I started my career researching evidence-based practice and doing systematic reviews as a PhD student. And I also worked in low-income communities. And at the CDC, I got to meet and learn from the always terrific Dr. Ann Dellinger, who opened this conference. And later I got to work with the late, great Peter Kissinger, coincidentally, whose birthday it would have been today, who was president of the AAA Foundation, to establish the regular aging and mobility roundtables to get a better understanding of the wide range of people and organizations like ITNAmerica working in this area. I think Peter was one of the people who introduced me to Catherine, actually. So I remember thinking when I first met Catherine Freund that I thought, wow, she wants to change the system instead of just placing blame on drivers, as most people do. That's so public health, and what a novel idea for transportation. This was long before the safe system approach was widely adopted by the US DOT, which I'll mention soon too. And as Catherine mentioned, we served on the White House Conference on Aging in 2005, where transportation and mobility for older people was number 3 on the top 50 priorities. But it was still hard to get a lot of attention or support for aging and mobility. But through all this, ITNAmerica continued doing your good work, one community at a time. So after that, after the White House Conference on Aging, and AAA, I went to work for the FIA Foundation, which is an international private philanthropy that's focused on safe, sustainable transportation. And I worked on efforts at the United Nations to include road safety into the worldwide Sustainable Development Goals, which you see on the screen here. And it was really the United Nations Aging Caucus. That was one of the key groups that helped me get transportation safety into the SDGs. We worked with diverse interest groups: aging, indigenous, environment, medical, health, women's rights. And finally, in the end, the UN SDG target 11.2 was passed, which says it will provide greater access to safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transportation by 2030. This is just a UN goal with no funding attached, but it's really the first worldwide recognition of safe, accessible transportation as an element of well-being and development. And I like to think it might have helped at least a little in leading to the eventual adoption of the safe systems approach, which is widely now used at the US Department of Transportation. And as you can tell, I mean, the world is just catching up to what ITNAmerica has been doing for decades. So for me, it's come full circle. After serving my term at the NTSB, I became a senior advisor to the FIA Foundation in the UK and a Canadian-based organization called the Traffic Injury Research Foundation, TIRF. And now I'm fortunate to work again directly with communities, currently the Blackfeet Tribal Nation and the bilingual English-Spanish East End District in Texas. And I'm helping them obtain road safety financing. And these are people and places that have been historically marginalized and mistreated. These are the most vulnerable. These are communities who've never applied for, much less received, this type of funding. And I'm happy to report that both communities recently received some of the largest planning grants offered through a funding opportunity called Safe Streets and Roads for All, or SS4A, which is based on the Safe Systems approach. Thank you, Morgan. You were right, ahead of me. So that was great. So what you're doing in your communities and with ITNAmerica fits perfectly in with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, with the Safe Systems approach, which is being used by the Department of Transportation and state departments of transportation, with public health, with many of the work that the US DOT is actually funding in the 2 communities I'm working with and many other communities. Your work with ITN Country, for example, will enable many more communities like my friends and colleagues at the Blackfeet Nation and the East End District to provide dignified transportation for their aging population. And these are 2 communities that truly honor and value their elders. So like what you do at ITNAmerica, could you go to the next slide, Morgan? Many places, such as the Blackfeet Nation and the East End District, they have an inherent understanding of what a safe system is. They have an inherent understanding of the need to be holistic and multidisciplinary. They have an inherent understanding that really everything is connected. So there is a word in Anishinaabe Algonquin, the indigenous language of the place where I currently live in Ottawa. And that word is ankozi. And that means simply everything is connected. This is the sign I saw outside of the Ottawa National Gallery of Art every day because it's near my house. I passed it every day before it sunk in that it also applied to my work. Yes, I can be a bit of a slow learner sometimes, but these two communities and your communities, they've been telling me for years that everything is connected. And like Catherine Freund knew when she founded ITNAmerica, it's not just punishing someone for a mistake or finding an individual at fault. It's about changing the system. It's about changing the whole system because everything is connected. So on a related issue, it's become very fashionable again to talk about the importance of involving business in road safety and corporations. And of course, to all of you and to the two communities I work with, business and mobility and road safety have always been connected, along with education and housing and health and caring for our elders. It's always been connected. In fact, the Blackfeet Nation's governing body is actually called the Tribal Business Council, and the East End District is incorporated as a business district. There is no separation, as all of you know, between business and government, or even science and evidence-based practice, because it's all part of our communities. It's all part of the same system. Everything is connected. That is what I feel ITNAmerica has always represented. It's always done. And that's what others are learning thanks to your example. So finally, to be forward thinking and to look on the horizon, I know we always keep in mind the concern of how to scale up. Sometimes we can be paralyzed by our worry and our ability to scale up, to expand our efforts. So what's the first step to getting scaled up? Just getting started, which you have already done to wonderful effect. You've been brave. You haven't let your fears get the best of you or naysayers. It probably seemed impossible to start with just 1, 2, or 10 communities when you have an entire country and a large one, but it's a start and it can be a catalyst, and you did it. Last year, even the US Department of Transportation began funding communities through the Safe Streets and Roads for All funding instead of funding states, because they wanted to better address the specific needs and in recognition of the importance of the community. So just to close, many of you probably know the story about the starfish. It's also called the star thrower. There are so many versions, but I think a common one goes like this. A man is walking down a beach full of starfish dying as they lie on the sand out of water. He sees a little girl throwing the starfish one at a time back in the water. But he looks around seeing the thousands of starfish remaining and tells her, that's not going to make a difference. But she just keeps throwing another starfish back in the water. And she responds, well, it did to that one. So I recently actually also ran across the original version by the anthropologist and writer, Dr. Lauren Isley, which has an even better ending in which the man returns to the beach and he says to the little girl, who's the original star thrower, I understand now. Call me another thrower. I allowed myself to think that we're not alone any longer. After us, there will be others. So this version reminds us about our influence on others and how that circle of influence can help many instead of one. And that's a kind of scaling up too. So I think of each of you really as a star thrower. We start with just one, each of your communities, or even just one person, but we recruit others for an even better and more, effect. And with an even better and more safe system ending, in the star thrower story, we would build a safe system in which we prevented the starfish from even washing up on shore in the first place. So, I mean, I'm really here to learn from you. I appreciate the honor of being asked to speak, but this is what you're doing with ITN Country, with all of your ITNAmerica programs, with the tremendous increases to well-being that you're making in each of your communities. Thank you. So now let me turn it back to Morgan and the interesting panels of star throwers you have today. And I'll be staying for the whole conference, for the question and answer as well. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak. And thank you for your inspiring work.
Thank you so much, Bella. That was great. As we move on, I think we're moving on to something where we will all learn something new. we're going to be hearing about the Rides Insight database and ITNAmerica's new API. And we'll also be hearing from Nicole Knowles with the National Council on Aging. And she will tell us how they're using this API for their benefits checkup website. So now I turn things over to Alan Freed, the Chief Technology Officer here at ITNAmerica.
Thanks so much, Morgan, and thank you, Bella. So this brief presentation is about APIs, which Catherine mentioned earlier. But first, we wanted to provide just a little bit of background on Rides Insight, which is the data source for our new API. Rides Insight is a website that enables anyone, anywhere in the country, to search for local transportation options. It is the only database of its kind in the country, a comprehensive database of all transportation options, both public and private. It is designed for older adults and people with mobility challenges. ITNAmerica provides the Rides Insight service at no charge. For users who prefer the phone to searching on the web, there's a toll-free hotline that they can call from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. that is staffed with a live operator to help them find their local transportation options. We're very excited to be rolling out a new Rides Insight website in the next week or so. Next slide, please. So what is an API? You may not realize it, but every one of you uses APIs all the time. In fact, you're using an API to attend this conference. APIs, or application programming interfaces, are the way that applications communicate with each other on the internet. APIs are communications channels between web applications and data sources. An API, quite simply, is a piece of software that takes a request from a user in a software application, and it goes and gets the data that was requested, and it returns it to the requester. APIs are ubiquitous across the internet. It's estimated that there are over 200 million APIs in use. Over 90% of software developers use APIs, and the API management market is estimated at $5.1 billion. And 83% of all internet traffic belongs to API-based services. The most popular APIs are for travel data, social media, geolocation, and the weather. Next slide, please. Here you can see a schematic of our working API. And on the right-hand side of the slide is how a user of NCOA's Benefits Checkup, which is a web application, makes a request for the information on a set of transportation providers. That request travels via the internet to the API. The API services that request by querying the data from the Rides Insight database. And then the API returns the data set via the internet to the requesting application, Benefits Checkup, where the results of the request, a list of transportation providers, will be displayed on their website. And Nicole Knowles, following me, is going to show you in much more detail how that works. Next slide, please. The Rides Insight database contains transportation provider data in great detail. It has all the information that any person searching for transportation options might need. The API will serve those data to any consumer of the API, which would be web applications or websites that purchase an annual license for the API from ITNAmerica. And now, to offer a real-world example of the use of the Rides Insight API, I'd like to introduce Nicole Knowles of the National Council on Aging.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me to your conference. And Alan, thanks for warming up the crowd about API. I know that just saying that, everyone's probably like, more coffee, please. But
Yeah.
This is very exciting what we're doing together. So Alan and I have been working together for several months now. to get this off the ground. But before I go into the API, a little bit about NCOA. So Morgan, if you can go to the first slide. All right. So National Council on Aging, we've been around for about 70 years. We believe that aging well is something every American deserves. At our core is equity, giving people opportunity, helping them along the way to have a balance of health and financial security for as long as possible. Looking at this stat, you do some math, probably fall into one of these. The 80.8 million Americans will be 65 or older by 2040. That'll be me. I'll be in that crowd. Next slide. I encourage folks, if you're not familiar with NCOA, please visit our website, ncoa.org, to learn about our organization. We have lots of material about how to age well from a health and wealth perspective, and things you can do to get involved. Next slide. Okay, so what we do. My team is responsible for the websites. That includes Benefits Checkup, which we'll get to in one moment, as well as the ncoa.org website. On the website, as well as through our community partners, we offer resources, best practices, tools, and advocacy. Next slide. So that was a little bit of background. Go to Benefits Checkup. The next slide has a screen grab of what our homepage looks like. Oh, no, it doesn't. Out of order. Shoot. Sorry, Morgan. Okay, so why do we have Benefits Checkup? Approximately 30 billion in benefits go unused every year. It's because folks are not aware. They don't know about the benefits. They are not comfortable applying, either from it's not for me, or I shouldn't take it from someone else, or just the process of applying for a benefit. So that's why we have Benefits Checkup. Now the next slide has a screen grab. We recently rebuilt the tool. It actually goes back to 2005. What you do on the site is have access anonymously to benefits assistance programs. Next slide. Morgan, could you go to the next? There you go. So primary customer journey is education about benefits assistance programs and resources. It's free, anonymous. Go in, look for programs that may benefit you. We have eligibility screenings so that folks can see before they apply whether or not they're likely to be eligible. And then activation, which is getting that help, whether it is to apply for that program, talk to one of our community organizations, the benefit enrollment centers, or call our call center. There are many avenues to get help. Now, to get to help, in some cases, that's going to take transportation. We found that transportation to get a huge database would be a lot of work. So when we came across and were introduced to ITNAmerica, we were very excited about it because this gives us an opportunity to put transportation programs into the Benefits Checkup customer journey. Allows folks to have easy access to the transportation that will allow them to get to the benefit enrollment centers, for example. Next slide. So if you haven't looked at Benefits Checkup before, I encourage you to do so. We have access in English and Spanish, soon to be another language as well, for nearly 2,000 benefits programs and resources. As I mentioned, you can check eligibility, you can create an account if you want, and we have many channels of customer support. Next slide. All right, sneak preview. This is under construction right now. I don't have a launch date, hopefully by the end of the year, but Morgan, if you can get to the next slide. What we're doing is working with Alan to integrate the API. So as you'd heard, ITNAmerica maintains a rides and site database containing thousands of transportation programs. ITNAmerica in this arrangement will continue to manage all of those programs in their database, continuing to do the work that they already do so well. What we will do is benefit from that information, being able to pull it into our website. So ITNAmerica host the API. They allow us to securely send requests to the API and sends us a response with that information. On our end, on the Benefits Checkup website, the users will input a zip code. They can select, yes, I want to see transportation programs. We're going to have some optional filters in there. And then they will receive the transportation programs from the database that ITNAmerica manages. Next slide. These are some mock-ups of how it's going to look. So again, a user enters their zip code. They're going to select transportation and have the opportunity to filter. The reason why the filtering is so important, as anyone that's familiar with transportation programs knows, there's a lot of nuance there. If I am a younger adult with a disability, I'm going to have different needs than an older adult that is in a wheelchair that is going to need to go door to door. I may have certain needs that I have for transportation. It could be to a grocery store. It could be a religious thing. It could be to a doctor's appointment. And each transportation program is a little different as to what they offer. So we're going to be putting filters there to help the users fine-tune the results that they have. Then once they see the results that will include the transportation programs, they can take action to schedule that transportation. Again, this is under construction. We hope to launch it by the end of the year, but we so appreciate all of the work that ITNAmerica has done to manage this Rides in Sight database, and so excited to be able to share this with the Benefits Checkup audience. I encourage anyone that has the opportunity, that's managing a website, to consider using APIs, because it allows my audience stays on Benefits Checkup. I don't send them away. I keep them in a consistent experience, but I leverage the good work of other organizations instead of recreating the wheel. So I think that's it. Pass it back over to you, Morgan.
Thank you so much, Nicole, and thank you, Ellen, for explaining APIs and how Benefits Checkup is using them. We are going to next, now that we've talked about how people can find transportation, we're going to move on to speaking about how you can provide transportation. We're going to talk about ITN Country, and I'll start off by giving you a little overview of the ITN Country platform and what that does. And then you'll hear from two programs that are in the field and active now. You'll hear from the founders of Independence Rides in Detroit and Senior Transport Services, which is down in the Sarasota, Florida area. So as I said, we'll start off by talking about what ITN Country is. So ITNAmerica really wants to make it easier for communities to start and operate volunteer-based transportation systems. ITN Country is a program that's designed with those type of services in mind. It provides a blueprint for getting started. It provides materials and templates for operations. And you also get access to the state-of-the-art ITN Ride software that's built on the Salesforce platform. As a charitable nonprofit, ITNAmerica offers this platform to communities at an affordable yearly fee. It's priced to be able to cover with bake sales and car washes. For already existing programs, ITNAmerica also welcomes them. We provide a roadmap to help existing programs make the transition to our platform, and we can even migrate data from your current system to the new one. Those who've transitioned have remarked to us on the robust reporting capabilities they get with ITN Country, and they also really like the online access they gain for their riders and their drivers through our driver and our rider portals. ITN Country membership includes 4 things that we think of as big pillars. So we start with our ITN Ride software. So that is what all of our programs use to book their rides and assign their drivers. As I mentioned, there are online portals for drivers and for riders to be able to request rides, and volunteers can choose their own rides. We have a computer algorithm that can help with matching drivers to rides, or if your ride coordinators prefer, they can manually match their drivers to their riders. It's also a software that provides the ability to bill either riders or third-party sources for the rides, if that's something that your program does. Tracks all of the special needs info about your riders, can help you track fundraising and community outreach, and provides really fabulous research and reporting data. That's super helpful for things like fundraising and grant writing. Also, with ITN Country comes the Community in the Cloud website, which Catherine mentioned earlier. So that's our online support and materials website for our program. It has a number of online courses that our staff can access, and those go over the ITN programs. There's things about volunteer recruitment and onboarding, marketing, fundraising, how to assist all sorts of different populations. There are also downloadable template materials for outreach and operations, so you're never starting from scratch, and it provides a place to connect with other programs. All of our ITN Country programs and affiliates are eligible to participate in ride service programs as well. You'll hear about those next. It's programs that ITNAmerica coordinates with national grantors, and our programs, the ITN Countries, are sub-grantees. Funds from those help to cover the cost of rides to essential services, like the eye care rides you'll hear about shortly. Joining that ITN Country also opens you up to being part of a national network of peers. If you have a question that pops up that you don't know the answer to, or do you need a policy on something and you don't want to start from scratch, our network has regular opportunities for everyone to come together and meet with their peers, to share ideas and to seek advice and to learn new things. As part of ITN, even the smallest of programs has the weight of the national network behind them. That's my brief introduction to ITN Country, and now I'd like to introduce you to two of the people out in the field doing the work. You'll hear from Carl Wellborn first, and he is the founder of Independence Rides in Detroit, Michigan. And following Carl, you'll hear from Bill Kaiser, who is one of the founders of Senior Transport Services in the Sarasota, Florida area. They'll both be answering two questions for us as they speak. The first question that they'll answer is how or why did they get involved in starting a volunteer transportation service? And then they'll also tell us one thing that their service is currently doing that they really like to share about. So thank you very much. And now I'd like to turn it over to Carl.
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for the introduction. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so like many others, the wisdom of many others is rubbed off on me, so I'm going to read my responses so I remain on time. So to the first question, how we got started, I spent most of my 34 years at General Motors leading advanced transportation systems projects in design, engineering, and R&D. One of my largest projects was a 3-year effort called the Independence Project, which investigated this unprecedented aging of the world's people. The charge was to understand it. What does it mean for automotive manufacturers like us? And then to develop strategies for meeting market needs as the market morphs going into the future. That project really taught me just how significant the problem of transportation for older adults was, is, and will continue to be going forward. So when I retired, with Catherine's help, I simply stepped out of that space into this one to help where I could. To the second question about one thing that I'd like to share, highlight, as expected, this space continues to morph and change, and COVID is a perfect example of that. So one of the ways we've tried to keep in sync with those changes is through programming concepts. For example, the Nobody Left Behind project is a collection of 7 funds that support specific ride destinations. It connects donors with, it connects donors who want to fund no-charge rides for specific ride destinations with older adults who need rides to those specific destinations. A couple of examples of the funds are, one, the Healthy Smiles Fund. The goal here is to encourage older adults to reconnect with their dentists and dental hygienists. So we identify donors who are focused on dental health and connect their donation support to seniors who want to maintain their dental health. We were fortunate to connect well with Delta Dental, who agreed with us and provided a small grant to do exactly that. Another example of one of the funds is the Celebrate Independence Fund. The emphasis here is getting older adults reconnected to the arts activities in their communities. In this case, we identified donors who want to encourage community attendance to local arts events and connect their donation support with seniors who want to attend those events. So it's through these kinds of creative calisthenics we try to keep connected and look forward to finding more opportunities or systems that will help us to keep people moving. And that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Carl. We will now turn it over to Bill to answer those questions as well.
Thank you, Morgan. It was funny that in that picture you shared introducing all of us, I noticed that that's my shirt with the logo on it, my company logo. And if you look close enough, you see there's a little road heading off into the distance towards the sun. So I kind of think that transportation was something I was maybe destined to be involved with even way back when. The details of how I got here. I joined the board of a former affiliate back in 2020 before COVID. Before that, didn't really know about it, didn't think about it. I mean, you know, being in Florida, God's waiting room. There were stories of, you know, elderly people, unintended acceleration, going through glass windows at banks and all kinds of wacky stories like that. But even then, hadn't thought about, you know, the need that there would be for, you know, getting these people help get them to where they needed to be. Because at the end of the day, what were they doing? People in that situation were just trying to get to a doctor's appointment and trying to get somewhere they needed to get to. So it was my involvement with that caused Don and I to start Senior Transport Services, because I saw firsthand that there was a big need down here. We're doing a lot of rides in this area, and we hope to get up to that level again. You know, it never sat right with me. Senior Transport Services was something that had to happen. We had to have community service. God, I'm sorry, I got derailed a little bit there. But it was something that we knew had to happen, and it didn't sit with us right that a population was being abandoned by people that supposedly cared for it, and that's what drove me. I know what drove Don, and I could point back. It's funny because I did a lot of work to get here, and I always thought of Senior Transport Services somewhat as my baby. But the fact of the matter is, my co-founder was really the one who wound me up and pointed me in the direction here. So I've been a big believer in it, and having driven numerous people now, having them thank you for getting them someplace, having them tell you how wonderful it is to have the service available to them is just one of the most rewarding things in my life. I mean, probably the first most is my daughter, but beyond that would probably be just knowing that I'm out there doing good for the community. Now, as far as the service itself, what are we doing? I would think that, you know, with everything, I have high standards. With everything I like to do, I like to make sure we maintain those high standards. So I want a first-class organization. I want Senior Transport to be the premier organization. So if there's technology we need to support, you know, getting the rides done, we get it. If there's something we can do to make volunteers' lives easier or drivers' lives easier, we do it. If we, you know, any way we can treat our riders better, we do it. I've done a number of training rides with new volunteers, and every time I talk to them, I'm like, yeah, we're not a limousine service, but I want them to feel like they're a rock star. They're a CEO of a multinational corporation. I don't want them to feel like, oh, we're just here obligated to give them a ride. Here you go, that, you know, that. So some examples are I'm working on getting, mobile detailing done for all our volunteers for the cars to keep them presentable. I alluded to the technology, worked on it. We use all mobile-based cellular cell connection type iPad Pros, basically, for drivers out in the field, things like that. And recently, a driver suggested to me, a volunteer suggested to me, and they make these little handles that fit in the hoops that go in your doors that provide stability, help people getting into the car. Ordered a bunch of those and got them distributed to the drivers. Now, as a plus, those also double as emergency devices. So you could use the tip of one to break a window if you're in a situation where you need to get out. It's also got a cutter for the seatbelt if you unfortunately find yourself in a situation like that. That was not what I got them for. I got them for the idea that we know that we have people who may need help getting up into cars. So at the end of the day, I wanted to be a first-class organization. I know I talked to Morgan the other day, and I know Catherine feels, I don't know if I heard it from her, always embody the idea that, treat the provider like they're a family member or my parents. They're that valuable to us, and we want them to feel that and experience that. And certainly, we're a service organization, and that's what we need to keep in mind. Service needs to be A+. That's all I have to say, Morgan.
All right. Well, thank you, Bill. That was great. We are going to be moving on to our next section. We're going to talk now about paying for rides, specifically funding access to healthcare. And I do want to, before we jump into that, remind everyone that if you have questions, you can go ahead and enter them in the Q&A box. We have a period set aside at the end of our event for answering questions. So those will all be answered at the end. As we move into this section, there'll be 3 of us speaking. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the Trusted Transportation Provider Program and how that functions at ITNAmerica. And then you'll hear from Virginie Delwart from Regeneron Pharmaceuticals. They provide a grant to ITNAmerica for free eye care rides. And then we also want to give you the opportunity to hear about the impact of those rides. So you'll hear from 2 of our riders, Kathy Davis from ITN Gateway and Patty Sarkey from ITN Portland. As we start out, like I mentioned, let's talk about how ITNAmerica is coordinating this. We know that there are over 800 volunteer transportation programs in the United States. Those are everything from small neighborhood groups to age-friendly efforts by municipalities. There's nonprofit organizations, hospitals, senior centers. There's even some paratransit and non-emergency medical transport in that category. So that's a lot of programs, and they provide a really important bridge for places and populations that can't use traditional transportation, be it public transportation, or maybe they're no longer able to drive. These programs are becoming more and more important as our population ages. As more and more people need rides, what we've seen is that the impact on society is increasing, and it will continue to increase. Adult children might miss work to take aging parents to appointments. Patients, if they can't get to follow-up medical care because they can't drive, they may end up back in the hospital. And more we hear about things like loneliness and social isolation and how those contribute to poor health outcomes. And one of the biggest things that contributes to social isolation is not being able to go anywhere. People become trapped in their homes and they lose contact with their communities. Luckily, we also know that corporate social responsibility efforts have increased. We have businesses out all over the country that are designed to, of course, bring in their profits, but they've also, on a large scale, decided to try to improve their communities. By 2019, the Harvard Business School was saying that 90% of companies were publishing corporate social responsibility reports. So we know they want to help. Oftentimes, we know that there is a vested interest to get people able to access services. A grocery store wants customers to come in and buy their products. Medical providers want their patients to be able to get to their appointments. So what we've talked about so far, we've got a whole bunch of volunteer and nonprofit services giving rides all over the country. And we've got businesses that want to make sure people have access to transportation. ITNAmerica is trying to help connect those. And that's why we developed our Trusted Transportation Provider program. That is in addition to ITN's network of programs. We've got affiliates, we've got our ITN country programs that are directly affiliated with ITNAmerica, and our Trusted Transportation Providers are a network of providers. They're vetted through an application process and they participate in grant programs. We've definitely found those grant programs are a win-win for both the volunteer services and for the businesses that support them. We have 67 trusted transportation providers. They cover 41 states. It's a really impressive network, and it allows us to provide coordination of grant programs that will further ITNAmerica's mission of mobility for all. So what we do is seek funding on behalf of all of the programs and all of their riders, and then we handle the coordination and the reporting from those individual sites back to the businesses or corporations or foundations that provide the grants. It allows small programs that otherwise wouldn't be able to access those type of grants to participate, and it makes it easier for corporations to include transportation in their social responsibility efforts. It centralizes the administration of so the corporation only has one program that's responsible for the grant and reporting to them, rather than having to try and coordinate many small programs. I'm going to turn it over next to Virginie Delwart from Regeneron, who will talk about their efforts to increase access to eye health care.
Thank you, Morgan. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Virginie Delwart. Like Morgan said, I'm part of the Regeneron's team in Tarrytown, New York, and we are the proud sponsor of ITNAmerica for a few years now. I've joined the company about 2.5 years ago, and I've been focusing on ophthalmology in my work, and that's how I came to be working with ITNAmerica. For those who wonder where that funky tropical accent is from, it's from Belgium. It's not, New York State, absolutely not. So I'm Belgian born and raised, and I moved here in the US 7 years ago. So it's a while now. But I'm very happy to be with you today to give you a bit of an overview of who Regeneron is, what we do, and how this program has evolved over the year and how much we have impacted the patient or the people who needed a transport. So Morgan, I don't know if I can move myself those slides or if you do that for me, but we can move on. Yes, thank you. So for those who don't know Regeneron is a leading biotechnology company. So we are a mid-sized organization. We have about 12,000 individuals. We have our main activities are in the US, but we are now expanding in the rest of the world with offices and Regeneron people outside of the US. We work and invent life-transforming medicines for those who are unfortunately affected by serious condition. So really the core DNA of our company is really looking at that science that can transform the life of individual by putting that into research. And we've been doing that for 35 years now. And our mission has been to use the power of science to bring new medicine to patients over and over again. Over the years, we've done that multiple times, and we have now a few products on the market. Today, I'm not here to talk about the product, but I just wanted to mention that this has been a journey. If we move to the next slide, you will see who our leaders are, and that's giving you the idea, that's giving you more information about really who Regeneron is. This is George and Len. And George and Len are our co-founder, and they've been at the captains of our ship for 35 years. And the whole adventure began in 1988 when they received a $1 million venture funding. And that's how the whole company started. Originally, we focused on neuroscience, and we have now expanded in multiple disease areas. Ophthalmology is one, but we also have cancer, we have dermatology, respiratory conditions, and many others. So the company has grown over the years for sure. Now, if we move on to where we are with Regeneron and ITNAmerica, we have, you can go to the next, Morgan, thank you. We have the mission to work at the intersection between what is important for the Regeneron as a company, the mission to use the power of science to bring those new medicines to the patient, and also what is at the intersection of the business objective to grow that business, but by improving the lives of the patient, and also the community, address the needs of patients and the caregivers in the space. So we really work in that area, that, you know, purple, or not purple, but pinky area where we have shared interest. And this is why we partner with ITNAmerica. We've seen countless of times how much access to treatment can be impacted by multiple reasons. Of course, access to medicine is one, but we also know that access to your doctor is another issue. Not having the transportation to go to your medical check is seriously impacting the follow-up patients can have, or the fact that they stay on treatment. So that can really impact the health of the individual. And for that, we have that common interest, that shared interest between ITNAmerica and Regeneron. That's how we wanted to partner with the group. So the mission of my group in patient advocacy is to really foster those meaningful relationships with partners that are vested in addressing the unmet needs of the individual. And we do that to not only address the unmet needs of the people there that are served by the group, but also to bring that knowledge back in the company and make sure we can advise other colleagues as they are developing programs. So this is in a nutshell where I'm sitting within the corporation of Regeneron. This is the patient advocacy team, and I'm an humble representative of that group. Moving on to the next slides, you can see how we are working. So our work is really focused on 4 pillars. One is advancing medical innovation. That's where, when we have clinical trial program, for instance, we have ad boards or roundtable conversations when we can listen to individuals impacted by the condition and bring that information back in. We also have the second pillar, which is addressing the unmet needs and improving the health of the individuals with the condition. And we do that through partnership with third parties, mainly patient organizations, but it can also be medical societies. And we look at programs that empower the patients to take an active role in managing their condition. And we do that through supportive programs. We have also the third pillar, which is support equitable access to care. And these are initiatives that enable patients that access to timely diagnosed and also evidence-based care. And the fourth pillar that drives our action is to also demonstrate the leadership of the organization we work for and represent. So really lead an active engagement program with the advocacy community to demonstrate Regeneron's commitment to improving health. Moving on to the next, I want to look a little bit at, the principles that drive that engagement. So we are dedicated to support, to understand the patient's perspective and the needs that the community is facing, and the needs that also impact the health that the person can receive in the area that we serve and work in. And we support those efforts really to raise that awareness and educate and empower them to really, really be hands-on. Like, if you need education on a certain condition, on what to do to live a better life, we try to partner with third parties to do that and to provide that. Now, like I mentioned, care can be drastically impacted by the fact you don't have access to transportation. And when you have an ophthalmology condition, driving may not be an option for you or for the individual. So Rides Inside made perfect sense. And it's one of the many valuable programs that we support at Regeneron. So I want to put that in this context and dig a little bit deeper into ITN program Rides Inside that we have had for multiple years now. So Rides Inside is as we all know, an independent program that is financially supported by Regeneron. And we provide subsidized high healthcare rides. And the program connects people with local transport options through the hotline or the searchable online database. As I said, we've been partnering with ITNAmerica on Rides Inside for a few years now. We celebrate a decade of work together, and we're very proud of that. We started in 2016, and we are going strong. So it is really a pleasure to be here today with you guys. Over the years, the program offers more than 100,000 free or subsidized eye health care rides and 137,000 transportation referrals through the hotline and database. So for the visual learners, you can see on the right the graph, which represent what I've been talking about. So clearly, this is an important program for us, and we've been working with ITN for 10 years, which is, a big chunk of our life, or at least my life, and it is a true pleasure here. I think this is my last slide. I don't remember exactly, but yes, here it is. One more. So about the relationship. So we have, in addition to Rides Inside, this year we've been able to support ITN country community. So really, for us, it's the extra step that we're taking to really support the expansion of the program and the availability of drive and network. So how we could improve that network of available ride and providers. So by giving that seed support to extend the program to 10 ITN countries. So we are supporting ITN for that. And we are really very much looking forward to the outcome of this initiative because we know it's needed and it will be impactful. So with that, I think it concludes my little introduction to Regeneron and explanation about our relationship and the work that we've done with ITNAmerica. Thank you very much. One quote. I know it's a great segue to the rest of the program, right?
It absolutely is, yes.
Yes, I think it is very important that we all center that back to the ones who are receiving the support and the help. And we have a gentleman or a person. I mean, the picture is not the person who shared the quote, it's illustration here. But it is a person from Monterey County. And that person shared with us that trying to get rides for macular degeneration had been a stressful ordeal. When I found out about ITN, I immediately called their office, filled in necessary information, made the deposit, and became stress-free from worrying about rides. I think that is so powerful of what ITNAmerica and Rides Inside has done for countless of individuals suffering from vision impairment. And for that, my biggest thank you to all of you for all you've done and continue doing.
Thank you so much, Virginie. We appreciate you being with us today. And now it's time for us to hear directly from some of those riders. So I would like to invite Kathleen Davis first to speak. She's a rider from ITN Gateway, and she would like to share what the eye care rides have meant to her.
Thank you, Morgan. Can you hear me now?
We can. It looks like something's covering your camera, so we can't actually see you. There you go.
Okay,
Perfect.
sorry, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Kathleen Davis, and I want to, I'm here, I want to thank you for letting me speak to you today. After 41 plus years of driving, I eventually had to give up that luxury. My medical disabilities were worsening. And then a couple of years later, my beloved husband of 36 years unexpectedly passed away. As you might imagine, this tragic loss was hard emotionally as well as practically in so many ways, one of which was transportation. There are fewer opportunities in St. Peters, Missouri for a disabled widow on a fixed income who doesn't drive than you might expect. And we were thrilled and relieved when we found ITN Gateway. Months later, the pandemic hit and ITN continued to faithfully provide rides to me and to our community, for which we were so grateful. My oldest daughter regularly comes and helps me. She also has a job over an hour away. ITN has helped tremendously in easing our burden by providing safe, reliable, and affordable transportation for me and my service dog. My ITN rides allow my daughter the chance to work, and they get me to my appointments safely and on time. I'm at ease with the knowledge that my ride will be picking me up as well. This year, I have been to multiple eye appointments trying to determine why my peripheral vision was off and spotty. My ophthalmologist and optometrist offices are farther away than my routine appointments ITN brings me to. As such, the cost to get to these appointments is also higher compared to my other rides with ITN. This year, we weighed the pros and cons of my oldest taking off more work for further follow-up eye appointments. Something that gave us a peace of mind was that ITN had the grant for the eye appointment rides. So the burden of paying for that round trip ride for us was defrayed. Furthermore, ITN worked with me in the doctor's office. They knew that that office often runs late as they value time with each patient, much like ITN cares for its riders. ITN got me home and the others to where they need to go with ease and grace, as they steadfastly do. We are so very grateful for this nonprofit and their hard work and dedication to their riders. With ITN, I know that the drivers are vetted and that the organization is reliable. They are patient and helpful. And on days when I am having troubles getting out of or into the car or walking to the door, the drivers assist me. I see their friendly drivers, staff, and volunteers alike week after week in their volunteer and professional capacities. This gives me peace of mind unparalleled to other options available to me, like taking a cab with a stranger driving. And it is easier than asking friends for a ride. ITN works hard to make rides affordable, and your partnership with them has, for us, helped to ease that burden even more. We see you, pun intended, and we are so grateful for the grant's continued partnership with ITN in helping riders like me get to the eye care they need. Hindsight is 2020. Though often said in regret, it is just as possible to see as clearly then as now, and to realize that we have made the same choices all over again. I hope for you that in the case in awarding this grant to ITN, I'm here because I want you to know how much this grant helped me and the people like me in the last year. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
Thank you again. We're now going to turn to Patty from ITN Portland. Patty, go ahead. Thanks for joining us.
Go ahead. You're good. Go ahead. Yep. Go ahead. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me and for the introduction. And I am Patty. I am blind and use a guide dog, standard poodle named Jeffrey. I am hard of hearing and have worn a hearing aid for many years. And almost 5 years ago now, I got a cochlear implant, which helps me to get around. I have been using ITN now for 8 years. And I wish I'd known about them way before that, but I didn't. But I am taking advantage of what I know now. The drivers from ITN are well-trained, very courteous, understanding, and I want to say compassionate, but that's not the right word. They just care. You don't feel out of place with them. My drivers pick me up at the door, guide me to the car, or I let my dog guide, and they escort me into the building I'm going to, and oftentimes right to the desk in the office, so they know that I'm registering for my appointment. I've used other forms of transportation, but I have not found them to be quite as understanding and trained and willing to do the job. ITN's a volunteer program, and they do it because they want to, not because they have to. And I appreciate that in anyone. Is there anything else? I'm sorry, I'm not that well prepared for this.
You're doing great.
When I
You
can't.
did great. You did great, Patty. We appreciate it. Thanks, Patty.
Patty, we were all touched to your lips, waiting for the next, for more of your story. Thank you for sharing.
All right, and we will now move along. We are now going to hear, we've talked about finding rides, we've talked about providing rides, we've talked about paying for rides. In order to make any of that possible, as Catherine mentioned at the beginning of our presentation, we need drivers. And so ITN's newest project is America's Volunteer Driver Center, and you're now going to hear from Nick Candela, the program manager for that, about our new program. Nick, take it away.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Candela, and I'm the project manager for America's Volunteer Driver Center. Thanks all for being here, and I'm excited to give you an overview of the project and everything that we're doing here. Next slide, please. Next slide, please, Morgan. Thank you. All right, so what is America's Volunteer Driver Center? Well, it's going to be a national public information campaign to recruit volunteer drivers by changing the way Americans think about and support community transportation. Next slide, please. So if we talk about the need for America's Volunteer Driver Center, or AVDC, as I will refer to it sometimes, as you'll hear, we have to sort of think about it in terms of the supply and the demand. And maybe this is the Econ 101 coming out in me, but I like to sort of think about the problem in this way. And as many of us on this call know, the demand for volunteer transportation services far exceeds the supply in many cases. New communities often see that whenever they start a new service, and they get a couple of volunteers, by the time they do that, they've already got tons of calls from people who are in need of transportation themselves. And that's not a new or unique story. That often happens. And so AVDC sort of seeks to address this specific need. Next slide, please. All right. So why AVDC? So let's just sort of go through it really quick. There's obviously the aging of the population with 61 million baby boomers expected by 2030. There's the scope. Lots, on average, people outlive their decision to stop driving by 10 years. And the demographics are also really important too. As we know that about 3/4 of the country's older adults live in rural or suburban areas where there is little or no public transportation. Next slide, please. All right, so if we sort of ask ourselves what the current solutions are, we can kind of break them off into three main buckets. We've got public transit, for-profit solutions, and then the nonprofit sector. And if we look at public transit, just sort of everyone kind of being honest about the problem, there's just insufficient funding, and it's not for a lack of trying. And to adequately fund public transportation everywhere in the country among all the different areas, I think is a bit unrealistic, to put it mildly. Then if we move along to the for-profit providers like Uber or Lyft, sorry, just go back, please. Yep, thanks. If we go back to the for-profit providers, as we know, about 70% of all their trips are concentrated in 9 urban areas. So there's pretty poor coverage. And as we know, these are publicly traded companies who really serve a specific goal of maximizing profit. And they do so by essentially providing transportation to convenient riders and those who are the highest bidders. Of course, as we know, as people from the nonprofit transportation worlds, that's very different from how we approach this problem. Next slide, please. So what is our solution? We believe in scalable and financial sustainability. And we can achieve this if we increase the supply of volunteer drivers or volunteer labor. And we see this as a national approach for a national need. Next slide, please. All right, so AVDC's goal is to meet the mobility needs of America's aging population. And so earlier I mentioned that AVDC is a national public information campaign to change the way Americans think about and support volunteer transportation. But it's also important to mention that AVDC will provide a destination for prospective volunteer drivers. And our future website will match volunteers with any of the thousands of nonprofit transportation programs that exist in the country, including those who are outside of the ITNAmerica network. And it will allow the volunteer drivers to decide where they want to volunteer. So that is how we really plan on addressing the insufficient supply of volunteer drivers. And right now, we're currently in the 2-year planning process for the campaign, and we're proud to be working alongside the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention and the Federal Transit Administration. And I'll get into their roles in a bit. Next slide, please. All right, just to give a very brief overview of our work plan and kind of where we stand with this project. So right now we're knee deep in the environmental scan. And so what that means for us is we're kind of conducting an inventory of all the other public information campaigns and national recruitment efforts that have already come before us. And we're learning from their successes and asking ourselves, which elements can we draw from, what can we learn, and how can we make AVDC as successful as possible? So in addition to that, we'll also have a marketing plan, so effectively disseminating messages and communicating with the public, a technology plan. So we're going to involve stakeholders at every level to make sure that AVDC's website and AVDC's technology really accurately reflect the needs of volunteer drivers and the nonprofit transportation providers who we seek to serve. Financial plan, obviously, to make sure that we are sustainable for years to come, because we want AVDC to last for a long time. And working on recruiting a 24-member advisory council, which will comprise subject matter experts to help make strategic, or to help provide strategic recommendations for the National Public Information Campaign. And then similarly, a 24-member leadership roundtable with representation from all 3 major sectors of the economy, as we define them: business and industry, philanthropy and nonprofit, and government. And lastly, the planning process will conclude with a report to the U.S. Secretary of Transportation. Next slide, please. All right, so AVDC supporters, I mentioned the FTA and the CDC earlier, but just to go into it a little bit more detail here. So the FTA provides AVDC project oversight. The CDC provides technical support in the planning process. And our private supporters, we're very proud to say, include the Next 50 initiative out of Denver, Colorado, who will support the technology build for America's Volunteer Driver Center and the actual website itself, which again will automatically match volunteer drivers with nonprofit transportation providers for them to choose from. And the Consumer Technology Association Foundation, who have supported text messaging technology, which will help us more effectively communicate with prospective volunteer drivers. So very proud to have them on board with us. Next slide, please. All right. We encourage everybody on this call to stay informed. Go ahead and check out our interim website at americasvolunteerdrivercenter.org. And please do register and sign up to receive information in the future. We've got 3 different boxes for you to check depending on your path, whether you are a prospective volunteer driver, a part of a community who wishes to receive volunteer drivers, or if you're just somebody who thinks it's a really cool project and wants to stay informed about our progress and where we are with the project. Please do go there, check it out, and do sign up to receive updates and information. Next slide, please. That's it. That's my contact information. If you want to get a hold of me, please do. I will be here. That's it. Back to you, Morgan. Thank you.
Nick, we are now going to move into our question and answer time. So we appreciate everyone holding questions till the end. And I am going to ask Susan from the ITNAmerica staff. I'm going to stop the screen share for a moment so we can see all of our panelists. And I'll ask Susan to pose the questions to the appropriate people as we go through that.
Okay, well, I'd like to start off with hello, everybody. And I would like to start off with the first question. And Alan, I think you can answer this, and then you can probably answer the one about how to correct information. But the first question is, how do we and our transportation partners ensure their programs are included in the Ride Insight database?
Sure, yeah, thanks for the question. So there's a couple ways. So when our new website rolls out in a week to 10 days, you'll be able to go right on that website, and there's a page there so that you can fill out a form and enter new programs, correct existing programs. So we're pretty excited to be adding that easy way to upgrade the information. In the meantime, right now, though, you can reach out to Joe Warren, who's the Rides Insight project manager. And his email address is joe.warren, WARREN, at ITNAmerica.org. And you can reach out to Joe and he will correct that information, or in about a week or so, you can go online and fill out the forms online. Thanks for the question.
Okay, thank you. And I think you answered that. I'm sorry, that if anybody needs to correct information, they would also, of their organization on Rides Insight, they would also contact Joe. Okay.
Yep, they contact Joe, or you can also do those updates online, as I say, when the new website is out in a week or so.
Okay. Next question, I believe this goes to Carl. It's, do the dentist offices donate to be a destination?
Thank you. In our case so far, that has not been the case. In fact, we've been working hard to kind of communicate what it is we're doing, since this is such a new concept. We expect that some will, but we don't believe that all will. So we'll just take it as it comes.
Okay, thank you, Carl. The next question, I believe, Catherine, is for you. The network of ITN partners, is this limited to volunteer transportation providers only?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because my computer totally crashed. I'm on my cell phone now. The national network, if you want to be in Rides in Sight, is open to any organization, nonprofit or for-profit. The ITNAmerica network, we are only permitted to serve nonprofit or public transportation services. That's requirement of our sponsors and also the IRS.
Okay, Catherine, thank you.
Can I jump in quickly because I'm
Sure.
looking at that question? Was this the one about volunteer providers? Because they're required to be nonprofits, but many of the nonprofits do have both volunteer and paid drivers, so it doesn't have to be strictly volunteer drivers.
Right. It can be paid drivers. It just can't be a for-profit corporation. Yeah. Thanks for the clarification.
Thank you. Thank you both. The next question, again, Catherine, I believe, but where's Virginia's quote? And this is the question: can someone discuss the big concept behind the deposit that was mentioned in Virginia's quote? I think it's a brilliant idea that people should understand.
Sure. Everyone who is either receiving service from an ITN affiliate or from an ITN country community can pay for their rides through something called a personal transportation account. And the way the system is set up, people deposit into the account, and then every time they take a ride, the software automatically debits the cost of that ride from, or the fare for that ride from their account, and they get a statement at the end of the month. So it's sort of like, for those of us who are still driving, you fund your trans pass to go on the turnpike. You pre-fund it, and every time you go through the toll booth, it debits your account. It's sort of like that, only we do it through the ITN software. That's what that deposit is about.
Okay, thank you, Catherine. The next question is for Nick. It's what stage of development are you in? When it is expected to be live?
Yeah, good question. So we are currently in the environmental scan for the project right now, but we're also simultaneously working on the technology plan and working on the planning for the actual website itself. And pretty soon we're going to start working with those stakeholders that I mentioned. As for the second part of your question, when we're going to go live, so we are, I would say, we're just under the first year of planning. So we've got another year to go, and then after that we go live. So probably early 2025.
Allie, did you want to add additional information to that?
Nope, I'm all set. That was covered well.
Thank you very much. I do not have any other questions in the Q&A section.
Can I add additional information?
Sure, Catherine.
I just want to express our appreciation, excuse me, to the Next 50 initiative, which has just awarded a large grant to us to build the technology platform for America's Volunteer Driver Center.
All right, thank you very much. And back to you, Morgan, or to Anne, I guess, to close this out.
Thank you so much. Let me get this started again. So I am going to turn things back over to Anne for some closing remarks. And while she's speaking, you may see a poll pop up. Please feel free to answer that. Let us know what you thought. And I will also drop into the chat some information on the workshop that we have for people who are interested in starting a service in their area. That workshop's going to start about half an hour after this event ends. So that's 3 p.m. Eastern, and I'll put the link, like I said, into the chat here. If anyone would like to participate, we're happy to have you. Thanks. And go ahead, Anne.
Okay, sorry, I had to unmute myself. So we packed a lot of information into 2 hours today. So thank you for the engaging and excellent speakers that we had. Please do fill out the poll that you're seeing. It really helps us so that we can hear your thoughts and continue to improve ourselves. I also hope that you'll be moved to take action, whatever that means for you. If there is an existing volunteer service in your community, I hope you think about volunteering to drive. If there's a lack of transportation in your area, I hope you reach out to your neighbors who may need a ride, or even think about starting a service. If you're a healthcare provider or business, think about how you can help those with transportation challenges get to you. If you're a funder, I hope you'll recognize the role transportation and mobility play in overall wellness and encourage transportation programs to apply for funding. If you're a part of an organization that could benefit from helping your patrons find transportation options, I hope you'll explore the Rides Insight database and API. And of course, if you need transportation for yourself, check out Rides Insight or call our toll-free hotline so we can help you discover what is available in your community. Once again, thank you for your time today. And if you have a question that didn't get answered, or you'd like more information about anything we discussed today, feel free to send us an email. The address is info@ITNAmerica.org. We will get right back to you. Have a wonderful afternoon.